trick in making my love stick. Watch the trick.
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and the Common Man Cup podcast. While other film podcasts might like John Wayne, we base our entire American persona off of one of his movies. Every episode, we discuss a film through the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I am a film critic, and I write about films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks. I am joined by my brother and common man co-host, a Mac Daddy pimp himself, Jake Miller. How you doing, buddy?
You know it, bud. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We're doing our listeners' choice episodes.
I just don't have the suit.
You don't like.
I don't have the fancy suit
and
or
not
the big medallion. And
whenever for some reason, whenever you think of pimp, you don't think of big beards. I don't know why. Like the facial hair has to be a very specific way. It has to be like, maybe a little tailored, maybe a little, if you have the. Yeah. The soul patch.
You have to dress for the job that you want.
So that's why I don't dress like a pimp. I don't really want to be a pimp. It doesn't seem very exciting.
I don't either.
It doesn't seem like something I want to do. Like
I want to manage a bunch of women.
It sounds terrible. You're not.
Yeah.
So this is one of our listeners' choice episodes today. Want to give a shout out to our listener who actually chose this, Matthew Anderson, cinephile and filmmaker, guest podcaster on a number of podcasts. You can find him on Twitter at Matthew 05814-152. I really hope that's not his phone number. He's probably inundated with phone calls, but Matthew's a great follow on Twitter. You can follow all the stuff he does. His writing, his scholarly work, Linktree, linktr.ee/Matthew995. Matthew, thanks so much for choosing this.
Absolutely.
It was an interesting choice, and one of the reasons we picked it, we were like, hey, it's kind of an out there one. Today we're talking about a film that people don't really talk about much. It's not the 1986 Billy Crystal version. Today we are talking about Running Scared, directed and written by Wayne Kramer, starring Paul Walker, Vera Farmiga, Cameron Bright, Carl Roden, and Chaz Palminteri, co-starring Johnny Mesner, Ivana Milishevich, Alex Newberger, Michael Cudlitz, Elizabeth Marvel, and Bruce Altman. Opened on February 24th, 2006. And it was a big fat bomb. Box office of only $9.3 million on a $15 million budget. No awards attention whatsoever. It wasn't just a box office bomb, though, because critics hated it, too. 41%.
It was pretty upside down.
Very much so. 41% critics. A solid audience score, 79% from audiences. I know it's kind of easy to kind of fall into that. I feel like this has gotten much more of a cult following and a much more appreciation later as it's gone along, especially after Paul Walker passed away, just because it's
right.
He doesn't have another movie like this. Like this is the only one of his type of movie. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But the quick plot summary of Running Scared from 2006. Running Scared, as we said, Paul Walker is the star. His name is Joey Gazelle, which is always kind of, they kept calling him Mr. Gazelle. It always made me laugh. Anyway, he is kind of an underling of a gang. I assume they're Italian. I guess they're never specified, but in New Jersey.
Yeah,
probably Italian.
And it gets more into the Russian mob, though. They make a deal with Vori.
Yeah, so I guess he's an underling of the Italian mobs, and they're doing a drug deal between these mobsters and a Jamaican gang. It goes awry because the corrupt cops kind of infiltrate it all. There's a shootout where all the Jamaicans are killed and two of the corrupt cops are killed. The mobster, the head mobster, it's not really the head. It's like the head mobster's son is this is Tommy, played by Johnny Mesner. He's kind of the guy in charge of this little group. And Paul Walker, Joey, is the one who's like, okay, well, I use this gun to kill this guy, get rid of the gun. And that's kind of his thing. He's kind of like a cleaner. So he goes back home, and he's married to his wife, Teresa, played by Vera Farmiga. They have a son. Yeah, we're big fans of Vera Farmiga in general and in this movie. But has a son, and then next door neighbor Oleg, a little Russian kid whose parents are just very well adjusted, cooking meth in the backyard. They beat the hell out of him. So he's over there a lot. So Joey goes to hide the gun, and Oleg discovers the gun and actually takes it, not for any nefarious reasons other than to protect his mother from his abusive father. So as they go,
it was a self-defense.
Self-defense. There was no real
or defense of his mother. It's not. Yeah.
Yes. So Oleg shoots his dad and then runs off into the night. Obviously, with the gunshots next door, Joey goes over to investigate, realizes the gun is gone, and realizes how much trouble he is in. So he pretty much is scouring the city to try to find Oleg and the gun, to protect Oleg and to protect himself, because if the gun is found out that it'll jeopardize the Italians with the Russians and all this. There's a lot of interconnecting mob things. Oleg, meanwhile, is on the run from his father, but at the same time trying to evade the police and the various random terrible things that happen in New Jersey. These hissing drug addicts, or obviously the world's totally not creepy, totally not anything wrong with this pedophiles. Oh my
God,
man, that
was the worst part.
It was the worst yet the best part. But we will definitely we'll definitely get into that anyway. So Oleg is able to escape, and the gun is kind of into the wind. It eventually ends up into the hands of a pimp, the aforementioned pimp daddy, and everything kind of comes to a head as Joey is taken by his boss and saying, like, well, you lost the gun. Why is this all kind of happening? We thought it was a part intentionally to kill this Russian guy. And they take to a hockey rink, and they essentially a big mess happens. Pretty much everybody dies. And then Joey reveals Joey reveals he's actually an undercover FBI agent and has been for the last 12 years, and is able to kill the rest of the mob, is able to get Oleg and kill pretty much everybody involved with it, and then gets out of there with Oleg and decides to just go home. On the way, they decide to stop and get something to eat, and they run into the aforementioned pimp with the gun. The pimp shoots Joey. Joey's able to kill the pimp, and they go home. They meet at the house where Oleg's mom kills herself, thinking Oleg is dead. But they get there, and the police and the ambulances are on the way. But it seems like Joey dies. They have his funeral, and then it turns out no, he's actually they're on a farm, and Oleg is now a part of the family.
He basically goes into a witness protection deal. They have a fake funeral for him. Yeah.
A very there's a lot going on. There is a lot. We were talking about last week of Misery, where it's like not really a plot heavy movie. This is a super plot heavy movie. There is a ton to go on. And as I started talking, I was like, oh man, I'm not talking about the other guy who was given up. It's like I barely mentioned the corrupt cops with Chaz Palminteri. I like the other guy in their group who was actually selling information to the cops. They eventually found out and killed. Yeah, the screw up. There's so much going on here, and I was thinking, it's like you get the idea of like a gritty crime thriller. This is like there's like another level of gritty when it comes to this movie. It's like there's nothing really nice happen. Who's the nicest character? The prostitute? Outside of the top ones. I mean, like take away.
I mean the wife.
The wife's nice and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like that prostitute.
I guess the ones down in the dirt. Probably that prostitute's. And she's probably the most redeemable of the low lives, I guess. She still
stuck a gun in a pharmacist's face to get some medicine, but it was for a good reason. But I mean, did you hear the medicine?
Need your medicine.
What was the medicine called?
Albuterol.
It was albuterol. Okay, so I hear those type of things.
No. That's that was from World War Z. They called it something else.
Something different. But
yeah.
So the inhaler,
it's the same thing.
By the way,
puffer.
Every time I saw him take the inhaler, I'm like, nope, did it wrong.
Yeah.
Gotta hold it.
Not. Yeah.
No, yeah. It's like, no, you're throwing all the stuff you put in your mouth out. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so the grittiness of this, like, it's funny because, like, I've seen this I've seen this before. So I knew he was an undercover cop, and it kind of paints it with a really interesting kind of brush, knowing that going in. It's kind of like watching The Sixth Sense for a second time. You're like kind of picking up all of these things. The whole time I was thinking he's a terrible FBI agent. Like he's like I get it's like all these kind of things, just like building cases, all this kind of stuff. But I mean, it's a good little twist at the end, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I love it whenever he finally shows the
microphone.
Yeah, that he's wired up. And something I really liked is like, I've been a informant for 11, 12 years or something like that he said, not even my wife knew.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so it's kind of like, man, that's deep undercover.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, all that time, like, and it's kind of funny, the fact that it's like, well, what, you know, the MacGuffin essentially to get it kickstart the action was his own truthful, like, it wasn't like, oh, this weird thing happened. It's like, no, you screwed up. Like, you did something you weren't supposed to do. Like, and in the end, the gun doesn't matter.
I know, that's the whole that's like the whole premise for the entire thing. And then it just,
we have to get
know
this gun.
What
we
happened.
Have to find this gun. Like, this gun is the most important. This gun. And then the gun's in the wind. And if they don't stop at the diner, it just doesn't really matter.
If you just go home.
Go home.
I was like, and I thought, like, if my face just got busted up by a bunch of pucks, I wouldn't be like looking to go out in public, you know, like, let's get home and get cleaned up, and I need stitches. And
that was, you know, of all the, you know, there's some really wild stuff that happens in this movie. That was the kind of the one thing at the end. I'm like, oh, he just has the one cut right here. Really? Like,
I've got something to add to that.
Okay, we'll get to that. But so I think this movie works the best when it leans into kind of the insanity of what it's bringing. Like, whenever it's kind of like the more straightforward, like, oh, you know, this kind of like, we got to find this kid, and he went in there, and it's like, oh, like, whenever it goes like way over the edge, I think that's when this movie kind of hums at its best volume. Like the entire let's talk about the pedophile couple. Elizabeth Marvel and Bruce Altman. They apparently make snuff films. They apparently have kids. They've done this with kids. Nudity is involved somehow. The thing about it is, whenever it all happens,
it's a kiddie porn ring.
Yeah, it's a kiddie porn ring. Yeah, but I mean, the insanity behind it, like, it really comes out of absolutely nowhere. Like,
you're not seeing that.
It's like he's running from his dad in an ice cream shop, and he jumps into the back of a car. Bam, pedophiles. Like, what? Just
like, how unlucky are you, Oleg?
Oleg, you're having a rough night. Like, and probably the most logical thing that this movie does is when Vera Farmiga finds everybody, understands what happens, and calls the cops, realizing, I'm gonna kill these people.
Absolutely.
So, like, you cannot let these people live. Like,
no. That's, as soon as you figure out what's going on in that scene, I was like, pop them.
Yeah, this isn't even a question.
Pop them, get kids out of there.
Yep.
And I mean, and even if you weren't like trying to get away with anything. I was like, I think you'd be completely legally justified in popping them and getting abducted kids out of the house.
Right?
I mean,
like you could shoot them 10 times each, put the gun down. Cops come in, they're like, what is this? And it's like, I'll tell you exactly what this is. And cops go
look in there.
Yeah. It's like, just take a look around, look at all this. It's like, and the little aspects of that house, the more you look into it, the creepier it is. Like the bathroom, when he's on the floor of the bathroom, it's a drain.
Yes.
And there's some residue, and you're just like, oh no, like just
your laundry's done.
Well, I cannot do a podcast without having laundry done. I'm sorry. It's what it is. I'm sorry.
Oh well.
But I mean, that's like, okay, so you kind of look at this movie and you're like, what's the weirdest thing that happens? Like, well, that's that. But like, because you set to that level, when you have Russian hockey player enforcers torturing you via hockey puck, that really doesn't matter much. Like whenever you raise it to that level, when you So actually, after all the shooting happens and these guys are still skating around, I was like, you know what? I'm committed to the bit. Good for you. Like, it's like people are being murdered left and right, and you're like still skating around, just trying to make this.
You got to get a pracky in, man.
It's like no days off, baby. And even the like, put it all under black light. Why is it all under black light? It's like, I don't know, it looks cool. Like,
yeah, I think that was more just to make it look more dramatic, or I mean, it's almost like, if you use a filter and make your photo black and white,
is that you're doing just kind of like, but you give
it looks more dramatic.
But you give it the pass. I like the scene in general.
Sure.
Everything's in blue. It's like, man, when people die in this movie, they don't just half die. They die very viciously, and there's not much ambiguity behind it. Like,
yeah, the only the one death I had a problem with, it was in the ice hockey rink, was this guy got shot in the chest with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And like he leans over the what do you call it? The rail.
Yeah, the rail. The side,
and then like falls over and dies. If you take a 12 gauge shotgun to your chest, you ain't going nowhere. It's done.
So there's two shotgun deaths to the chest in that same scene. Tommy gets shot and essentially like falls to his knees and doesn't get back up, and falls down and doesn't get back up. And the other guy, so you're like, okay, well, that one makes more sense. But I mean, like, especially, like you said, a guy shoots you point blank in the stomach with a 12 gauge shotgun. You're not moving. You're not. It's like, well, nope. This is where I'm going to die, and you're not going to remember it much because it's not going to last long.
No, that's a game ender. Yeah. I can tell you, like when I was with the police department, any shotgun uses, it was fight ending. It was done. They were done. It was over.
There was no like, oh, he took a shotgun around to the shoulder and then kept fighting. It's like, nope, he did not.
Actually, I was on one crime scene where a guy did get shot by a shotgun, but it took his whole arm off.
Oh, Jesus.
He lived, but
yeah, sure.
No arm.
Yeah.
So
it's just, well, it's
I don't know. It's a powerful weapon.
Certain firearms you don't really grasp the strength of, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, and there's so much hydrostatic shock that goes through there. So basically, it's like an explosion inside your body. Yeah. So
So whenever as I was watching this, as we've done in previous episodes, I view a lot of what I did, what I'm watching through the eyes of being a father for the first, as opposed to the last time. And the entire time I watched this, I'm like, Joey is a terrible father. he is dragging this kid. He is not being, it's okay. All this kind of stuff. He's just like screaming at him the whole time, pretty much like pinning up against walls. I'm just like, he is a bad dad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, I have a fucked up life and I'm just going to drag you right along with me.
It's like, it's like, well, this is a,
there's no shielding.
Yeah.
There's no shielding.
No, not at all. We had talked about, as the intro, we talked about this. We're talking about, obviously Paul Walker no longer with us. But you look at this movie and this is not like, he's known for obviously the Fast and Furious movies. And that will be, and his family will be well secured in their legacy. But if you look at all the other stuff he has done, like he was in a surprising amount of stuff when he was younger. Like he was in Varsity Blues. He was the bad guy and She's All That. He was in this movie Joyride, really interesting movie. A couple other stuff like that. Pleasantville. Like he had a nice little run, and then he got on Fast and the Furious, and that kind of became his thing. This movie is really the only deviation from that formula. More than anything else, it's the only time he's violent and profane. Like this is not PG-13 Paul Walker that you're used to.
Right. Yeah. He's a much more complex character.
Very much so.
Which is interesting.
Very interesting.
It's like all the films you mentioned that he was in, I've seen them all, but
doesn't really make an impression.
Much about. Yeah.
You're like Varsity Blues. He was the quarterback that got replaced by James Vanderbeek. She's All That he's the one who's like, make the bet to change it. Like he's kind of the guy that like sends everything off into, he kind of puts the wheels in motion, but he's more of a mechanism than he is a character.
He's a catalyst.
He's a catalyst. Yes. That's a good way to put it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then with this one, he actually gets a chance to be a little more than what, like he does. Fast and Furious movies, they are what they are. I know people love them. I get it. It's ridiculous. And I think he was perfectly aware of what kind of movies these were as well. He's like, I don't have to stretch to play this character. It's not like some huge like step to do what he did in those movies.
Yeah.
But in this one, he finally gets a chance. He's like, okay, this is a little more than just a guy doing action stuff. And it was more impressive to me than anything else looking back on it. Like, he's way better than I expected him to be.
Absolutely. I agree. I had never seen this movie up until now. I'd never even heard of it. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
We started watching it and I saw Paul Walker and I was like, oh God, this is going to be cheesy as fuck.
Yeah.
It's going to be Fast and the Furious bullshit. But I think he gets to stretch his legs in this one.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He gets to kind of show himself off a little bit.
He has to carry the movie. It's not like he's just like, oh, it's the car movie or this is like, no, dude, you are the guy.
You're the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently after this film didn't open well in the box office, Paul Walker was apparently a little bummed out. So he goes home and he discovers that Quentin Tarantino left a message on his scene praising the film and his performance. And he said, it's like, wow. Well, if Tarantino likes it, I must have done something right. Now the secret sauce of this movie is Vera Farmiga because she's great. She is. And it's kind of, it's an interesting type of role because, you know, that type of like, girlfriend / wife of a mobster. And you're like, and she kind of fits into that role pretty well. But at the same time, she's like, no, go out, find the gun, calm down, do what you got to do. Like, I understand. Like, I overlook some stuff.
This is what I signed up for.
This is what I signed up for. This is a woman who is not over her head. She is understanding of everything. It's a really fascinating type of performance that really should have been annoying. It should have been nothing. And it's way more of this movie than you'd think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like I think about The Departed. I mean, she's so great in that. And
it's a nothing role. There's nothing
not
to that.
Really.
And
but she's somehow, she makes a role out of something that really shouldn't be a role.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know if you've seen any of like the Bates Motel.
I've heard she's exceptional in it. She
is very good in that. And then there was one other I was thinking about that I've seen her in.
Maybe.
Oh, are we going to get to that?
Maybe get into that a little bit, but yeah.
Sorry, I might have spoiled something.
Not at all. I mean, Vera Farmiga in general, every time you see her, that's exactly what she does. She's like, okay, I'm going to get into a role that at least on the script and in the direction might not have much to it. And essentially give it layers upon layers and give it a layer of credibility that is really unearned. That she's
I would say she's one of the best. Like, she's very adept, very good at being a supporting actress.
Yes.
She doesn't try to steal the show. She tries to be part of the foundation that launches the plot. I mean, she does her job well.
Yes.
You know, it's not over the top or anything, or, you know, she doesn't underplay anything. Like, it seems like she knows where she fits, and she does that exceptionally.
And she also has chemistry with pretty much everybody, regardless. Like like you said, either Matt Damon or Leonardo DiCaprio in The Departed, or Paul Walker in this. The chemistry between Paul Walker and Vera Farmiga in this movie is a big part of it. And you're just like, I buy it. It's bought immediately. Like, the heat between them two, you're like, okay, it's like, I get it. It's like, and it's kind of nice to have a 10-year marriage that has a little heat to it on it. Like, it's just kind of nice.
Yeah. Hey, it's kind of like the from Misery. It's like, it's that kind of sarcasm that adds spice to our marriage, you know? Like, I mean, she's not a victim. She's not just taking this shit lying down.
She got into it with her eyes wide open. Like, she was not hoodwinked by all this. There's an interesting, like, this. I'm glad you were surprised. You were pleasantly surprised by this movie, because the first time I'd ever seen it, first time I saw it, this was years ago. It was I think it was on TV, and I'm like, I've heard of this movie. I don't know anybody who's seen it. I'll go and watch it. And the whole time I'm just like, this is not at all what I was expecting. Like you said, you go into it expecting a certain type of Paul Walker, and it's just not that. And it's kind of, you know, we had talked about this. I think we were talking about our Gray Man episode, where, like, when I'm watching Paul Walker, he looks like a sleazy New Jersey scumbag, despite being as incredibly handsome as he is, a very handsome man, but he is very anonymous and can get into, like, he can walk in front of cops and cops don't look twice. And then he can also get into the more darker aspects, and everybody goes, the credibility is there. Yeah. He's not Vin Diesel. No. Or The Rock. Yeah. Or something like this. I mean, my wife, whenever we watch it, she straight up said, like, from the time I was 12 until he died, Paul Walker was the guy. That guy she was like, I would have walked right past you for that dude. He's essentially the male version of, like, I kind of have a nostalgia for Jessica Alba, of her run from the 90s to the 2000s. It's like, and it's kind of like the male version of that. Like, nobody's showing up to this guy or her for her talent, even though they have undeniable talent in places. But the idea being is they're just so good looking. And
it's kind of like Jessica Biel.
Yes. You're just like, what a beautiful human. And
you're like, I don't care what you do. I just want to look at you.
And this is probably what makes this movie so rewarding. You're just like, you're expecting just the handsome idiot doing this stuff. And you're like, he really puts more into it than you expect.
Yeah. You can see him working.
Yeah.
I think everyone works in this movie.
Yes.
Like everyone's putting everything into it. Yeah. And for me, I think it paid off.
I think so too.
I mean,
it goes in some fun places, but I mean, like, so Lester the Pimp, David Warshofsky. You want to talk about a guy committed to the role? It's like he's so gross, but in the right way. Like he's there.
He's a good bad guy.
You know who I really like in this movie, and every time I see it, Johnny Mesner as Tommy. I think Tommy he's such a specific type of character. Like, the son of the mob guy. He's like, he's not intelligent, but he's hot-headed, that kind of cliched guy. But you're like, but he's so charismatic when he's doing it. And it's like, I really like it. And then my guy, Carl Roden. I love Carl Roden.
Which one's that?
He's Anzor, the John Wayne loving Russian.
Yeah. And
Carl Roden's one of those guys you're like, have I seen him in other stuff? It's like, you absolutely have seen him in other stuff. So he was in The Bourne Supremacy. He's
okay.
That's the second one. He's one of the handlers. He's been in the big movie you probably remember is 15 Minutes, a Kuwait classic, where the two Robert De Niro is a cop and these two Russian guys are videotaping their crimes.
Yeah. Okay.
A goofy movie. He's the main guy in that, and he's been in a lot of stuff since then. He's from the Czech Republic, and he's in a bunch of stuff over there.
Okay, I was going to ask if he's actually Russian or not. No.
I assume. By the way, I assume you've seen The Cowboys.
Oh. Yeah.
I say we're Southern guys from Texas, and our family we grew up on John Wayne.
I've got a John Wayne poster from The Cowboys in my garage right now.
See, exactly. So I mean, it's one of those things. You kind of understand the reverence behind it, and John Wayne doesn't mind dying in many movies. So it's pretty much there's probably 5, and that's one of them. So I mean,
yeah. And I thought it was kind of funny how what was the character's name?
Anzor.
Anzor. Like how he's like, get up, motherfucker. Like he does not like his hero dying. I mean, it literally pisses him off to the point of violence.
My wife
thought that was interesting.
My wife cannot stand romantic comedies romantic movies where the main couple who's supposed to end up together do not end up together. I love it. Yeah. It's one of my favorite things. Whenever they don't end up together, I'm just like, yes, because it happens so rarely, more than anything else.
Well, and it's closer to reality.
Yeah.
I mean, how many relationships actually make the long haul, and so, I mean, and everyone can relate to it.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't been in a breakup? Like, I don't know.
It's kind of the same thing with it's kind of speaks to an interesting idea of like, well, your heroes are built on the idea of them surviving. And what is your mindset if from the jump, your hero dies and always dies? And no matter how much you want him to, will always die. What does that do to your head? Like, it's interesting. It's
well, my favorite flick,
the guy himself,
it doesn't wind up good for him, but it's
well, they romanticize his potential. We as an audience know he dies, but it's more of the legend or the idea of him is not dead. No, he's out somewhere. He's gone, and
the defiance up until the end is what makes that movie work.
Yes.
The defiance up to the end.
Yep.
And but yeah, it's tough to see heroes die, you know.
I agree. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. All right, we are back. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. It is time for Bull for a Dumbass. Today we are going through the filmography of the lovely budded lady herself, Vera Farmiga, the star of this film and many others, Oscar nominee. We will get into it as we go along. She has been around. She's one of those kind of a journey woman careers until she kind of finally broke through. Had some random things early in the late 90s, early 2000s. First thing I ever saw her in was the aforementioned 15 Minutes. I think she's a hooker. I think she's a prostitute. I know we both seen the movie, but I can't say I can remember her in it.
That's where I'm at.
There's a lot of people.
I know I've seen it, but
it's a messy movie.
I don't really remember it.
I agree. The first thing I remember, so she's in various things going in the early 2000s, a lot of small stuff. The first thing I ever saw her in was like of some heft was the remake of The Manchurian Candidate. It was the Denzel Washington version.
Yes. Yeah,
she is.
I've seen that.
Liev Schreiber, the one who plays the brainwashed vice president, she was his love interest, who I think he actually ends up killing. In The Manchurian Candidate, that was in 2004. 2006 was a big year for her. She was in Running Scared, obviously, but her big breakthrough is Dr. Madeline Madden is her name. That's an insane name. In The Departed. That's Madeline Madden. Oh, what a terrible name.
Well, yeah, it's like like you need to base your kid's name on like if it's Williamson, don't name him
William. Yeah, exactly. Like
William Williamson or something. But hey, no offense if you got that name out there, but
I'm sure somebody does.
I'm just saying
it's you gotta give your kids a chance at success. Like
I don't know if I should say this or not, but
go ahead.
Like there's a guy I used to work with at the police department. Well, he had a pork related name.
Okay.
Last name.
Oh, geez. Was it ham or bacon?
I'm like, that's the only job you can't do.
Hello, Officer Bacon. It's just, of all the things you can be, literally anything in the if you're a butcher
guy,
if you're a butcher, it's cool. If you're anything else, it's cool. If you're a police officer, do not be a police officer.
No, that's your last name being Piggy or something.
Yes, that's a mistake.
But great guy, good at his job. No insult. Probably shouldn't have said that, but I'm just saying.
You're not wrong. It's a good point.
You know.
Yes, exactly. If your last name is Butts, probably shouldn't be a proctologist, or maybe you should specifically.
Maybe he was on to something, actually.
So big year 2006, The Departed, she really breaks through. 2008, she's in a little movie called Nothing But the Truth. I think she plays, it's one of those, they had a series of movies in the late 2000s revolving around like American spies. This is based off of the real a journalist who uncovered Valerie Plame. Do you remember the CIA journalist? There's a CIA covert operative named Valerie Plame who was leaked in a journalist, and she plays the equivalent of Valerie Plame. I don't have that on my list. I just she got fairly acclaimed for that movie. I just remember seeing about it. Now, a movie I know you have seen from 2008 that I have not seen. And from what I understand, I don't know if I want to see it. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
Oof.
Rough movie?
Yeah.
Rough one?
It is well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't criticize any performances or directing or anything. The subject matter I mean, it's a Holocaust movie.
Yes.
It's brutal.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I've heard
I
some.
watched it once and said, good enough.
Yeah. I've heard good things from people like that, but I've also heard some criticism about it. But I mean, I can't say one way or the other because I haven't seen it. But yeah, I knew you had.
Yeah.
And the next year, a movie I'm almost positive your wife has seen. I don't know if you have seen. Have you seen the film Orphan?
Orphan. I have not. My wife has. So.
Yes. I know she's a big horror fan, but I mean, the idea of Orphan in general, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, like I like the idea. I kind of like the general idea. And if you go into it, you're like, this is stupid. So let's do this. Sure. So
I'm gonna actually on that subject, I'm gonna out my wife.
Okay.
I'm just gonna call her out. Okay. Our aunt has a daughter that was adopted and
yes.
And my wife went and watched that movie and then came into our mom's house with her there.
Oh no.
And was like, never adopt kids. They'll turn out evil.
Yeah.
It's not knowing the background.
Yeah. It's like well,
foot and mouth.
Foot and mouth disease. I mean, it's that's great. Orphan in 2009. As I said, a nice little run of like, okay, The Departed, Manchurian Candidate, Departed, Running Scared, starting to become a little bit of more prominent. And then in 2009, gets her first and only Oscar nomination. Have you seen the film Up in the Air?
Up in the Air.
George Clooney is a guy who travels the country firing people.
No, it doesn't ring any bells.
It's a very interesting movie. It's a very of its time, like 2009.
What, like he's like an Axeman?
Yeah, he's a human resources consultancy firm specializing in employment termination. Essentially, and this is 2009, post to that, right after 2008, when getting fired is a big deal. Like happens, nobody can keep a job, and it's a really interesting, like, kind of the moral quandary of it, of like. And she is she's somebody who travels a lot too. And in the movie, her and George Clooney kind of have like this like casual affair. She's really, really good in it. And so is George Clooney. Everybody in that movie is pretty good. It's a really interesting movie. Very like, if you're a little insecure in your employment, it's not a great movie to watch. Be like, oh, well, and it gets some harsh stuff. It's good, well-made movie, but not exactly one I'm begging to jump back in and rewatch. Couple years,
like it sounds like Office Space, except not funny.
Pretty much, it has some funny moments, but I mean, it's much more a drama than it is a comedy, obviously.
Right.
2011, kind of going back into the idea of more mainstream stuff, and definitely a situation where you're like, not a very good movie, but she kind of elevates the character. Have you seen the film Source Code?
Source Code.
It's like Groundhog Day on a train with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's an action movie.
Never heard of it.
Source Code is so Jake Gyllenhaal wakes up on a train, and he is not who he thought he was. He's like, I'm this other guy, but his identity and everything says that he is somebody else. And on the course of this train, it blows up in a terrorist bombing. And then he wakes up kind of in a different place, and it's like, hey, we're part of this experiment called Source Code, where we can throw you into the situation and you can run in there and investigate and tell us exactly what happened, who's the perpetrator. It's like an action Groundhog Day. It's a really interesting movie.
Kind of sounds a little Matrixy.
A little bit, yeah.
A little
bit. Like it's sci-fi elements. Like it's like you really got to stretch your imagination to make it work. But she's
right.
She plays like Jake Gyllenhaal's handler, like army handler. It's worth watching. It's a nice, easy watch. It's the first movie I ever watched at a movie theater where you could drink. First time
Heck yeah.
That's always a memory I always share.
There you go.
The next year after Source Code, again, one of those type of movies that are like not exactly a movie you can remember much. I haven't seen it. Have you seen Safe House with Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds? It's one of those, I guess, just those disposable Denzel Washington action movies. I've never seen it. I don't know anything.
If I have, I don't remember it.
All I know is Denzel Washington, Ryan Reynolds, and something about CIA, South Africa, something. So sure, she's in it somehow. But the thing that she is probably most known for, movie-wise or anything else, even more than The Departed, is a franchise. A franchise I know is well regarded, but I have not seen a single one of them. The Conjuring.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit, but
I've not. I'll give it to you, but I've not seen. There's The Conjuring. 1 is in 2013, 2 in 2016. There's Conjuring 3 in 2021, and then she has like a cameo in an Annabelle movie in 2019. This is like a thing she does. Like this is her thing, and those movies make a ton of money. Like I don't know why. I just don't care about that genre. Like you talk about superheroes, I do not give a crap about that genre.
That's how I am. Like horror movies, they don't do much for me. But my wife loves them.
If you're doing something interesting, if you're doing something out of the norm, it's like, oh, it's scary kids. Is it a ghost? Is it exorcism? No. But if you do
Blair
something,
Witch Project,
Blair Witch, a good example. It's like you're doing something different. Even the first Paranormal Activity, it was a weird thing. So I'll always give it the benefit of the doubt if it's something new, but something like that, I'm just like, whatever. I just don't care.
I get tired of the jump scare movies.
Yeah,
and it's like anyone can do that.
Yeah,
like anyone,
hiding around the corner. Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Okay.
A movie. This definitely, our grandfather would have loved it if he'd seen it. He might have. In 2014, the Robert Downey Jr. starring The Judge.
The Judge.
Robert Duvall is the aforementioned judge. He is a stern judge who is accused of running over doing a hit and run, killing a guy. And Robert Downey Jr. is a hotshot lawyer who's his son, who goes to defend him.
Nah.
It is not a very good movie.
I haven't seen it.
It's not a very good movie. Like I said, our grandfather would have loved it. It's that kind of middle brow type of movie.
Is it like a Crichton thing or something?
It's Crichton-esque, Crichton light type. Mm-hmm. And Vera Farmiga plays the love interest to Robert Downey Jr. She's good in the movie, but I mean, and then and another one of those, just a long line of kind of hard to get on board with those type of movies. How about Godzilla King of the Monsters?
Oh, probably not.
So there have been 3 Godzilla movies since 2012, I guess. The original one, I say the original, the newer remake had Bryan Cranston in it. Pretty good movie, actually. Big cast. And then there's this one, Godzilla King of the Monsters. And then there's Kong versus Godzilla, which is...
Mm-hmm. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen bits and pieces of that one.
Yeah.
But it's, my kid's watching a monkey fight a dragon.
It's hilarious that you have real actors in these movies. Like, I don't know what, like why do you spend the money to hire real actors to be in these things? I don't see the point of having, so nobody's showing up to be like, Vera Farmiga's in this thing. It's like, nobody cares. It's like, they're there for Godzilla and he's fighting Mothra or he's fighting King Kong or whatever it is. It always seems so silly to me.
And it's mostly like CGI.
Mostly CGI, but for some reason it's filled with reputable actors. I'm just like, these guys just want a paycheck, I guess. Like, good for them. Get your bag. And, but I mean, whatever. she's got a couple more things coming up. A movie called Inappropriate Behavior with Bobby Cannavale and Robert De Niro. Something about a stand-up comic. It's coming up new, and then a movie called Cast. I can guess what that movie's about, but I don't really know. Okay, so I mean, Vera Farmiga, an interesting type of career. You went 4 for 4 to start, and then you went 1 the rest of the way. So 5 out of 11, buddy.
Oh,
It
bad
happens.
score.
It happens.
I fell.
Anyway, what do we got next, bud?
All right. Well, man, I hate to break it to you, but you're in the hot box.
Each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's trivia, sometimes it's not. What you got?
All right. So John Wayne, we've already spoke about.
Yep.
Obviously the one guy's got an obsession with him. What are your thoughts on John Wayne and his career, his movies, so on and so forth? You
kind of have to, a guy like John Wayne, you kind of have to look at like, you have to realize the kind of persona he was in the 60s and 70s, and you're like, okay, you're not going into a John Wayne movie, you're like, okay, what am I going to get? It's like, no, you know exactly what you're going to get. The only time
John Wayne,
you're going to get John Wayne. And every once in a while, you do get the little bit of different to it, depending on usually the director or how interested he is in the character or something like that. As a whole, he's a very watchable presence for me. It's just like he's got that attitude and all that kind of stuff. Whenever he kind of allows himself to get out of his comfort zone is when I find him really fascinating as an actor. I don't know if you've ever seen The Quiet Man. The Quiet Man, he goes to Ireland and he plays he's kind of reclaiming his Irish heritage after family members have died. And he goes back to he lives in Ireland. He's kind of a quiet guy. He's kind of a nice, sweet man. Relatively, he still does some John Wayne stuff, but it's so out of the ordinary from what you expect. You're like, this is nice. And I really appreciate whenever he stretches. He stretched a little bit. He didn't do it much, but he's a comfort food of actors.
That's a good way to put it. Excellent.
You know what you're getting.
It's like, this is my grandpa's stuff.
Yes. Yes. My father-in-law lives for John Wayne movies. Exactly. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, so on that same subject, what was John Wayne's real name?
Oh, he has it.
Without looking it up.
Oh man, it's girly. It's not Francis. It's something close to that. Oh man. Oh, I'm so disappointed in myself. Not Shirley. It's something like that though. It's Shelley. What is it?
Marion
Morrison.
Marion Morrison.
That's right.
I can see why he changed his name.
I'll give you a little fun John Wayne trivia. I don't know, fun. So they did a version of Noah's Ark in the pre-silent movie days. A Noah's Ark, and this movie was famous because this was before health and safety standards were around, and so what they did, they shoved all these for the famous flooding scene. They shoved a bunch of people in a room. They poured thousands and thousands of gallons of water in there, and I think they reported that 3 people died. There's rumors that 20 people died. It's one of those type of things.
This is pre-OSHA.
Very much so pre-OSHA. Yeah. So John Wayne was one of the extras, but John Wayne was a I believe a college swimmer. So the only reason essentially he was alive was because he was a swimmer.
I ain't drowning.
Yeah, I ain't drowning. So he's in that scene as one of the terrified people dying. So just fun little fact.
I was actually thinking about John Wayne the other day, and I was like, he was cast and performed as Genghis Khan.
Even more fun than this, Jake. I'll tell you one thing. So this movie, The Conqueror, Genghis Khan. This was filmed. They decided not to go to Mongolia to film it. They decided to film it in New Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And not only did they film
Same thing.
Not only did they film it in New Mexico, they filmed it near Alamogordo. What else was happening in Alamogordo at the time?
Nuclear tests.
And guess who all died within 10 years of that movie?
No shit.
John Wayne and many other members of that film.
Didn't he die of eye cancer?
He had a series of cancers. He had eye cancer and lung cancer. He had a lung transplant. He was really ravaged there by the end.
Well, and he smoked, chain smoked.
And this is before filter cigarettes.
Yeah. And I read something about him that directors would say, we've got to get it done before 2 because he's too fucked up.
Yeah,
he's hammered.
He's a drunk.
By then. Yeah. So he was, an infamous drinker and smoker.
The fact that he lived as long as he did was a miracle in and of itself, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me some luck, John Wayne.
Right.
All right. So overall, what are your opinions of this is a mob movie, organized crime movie. Overall, what are your opinions of mob movies, criminal movies? I don't know what you want to call them, but
I like the idea of them. They can get Goodfellas is the best and worst thing to ever happen to mob movies.
Yeah.
Because every movie before Goodfellas didn't know what it wanted to be, and every movie after Goodfellas was trying to be Goodfellas.
Yeah.
And
oh man, that's a great way to put it.
And there's never any movie about the mob that does not look at Goodfellas and go, I'm not touching anything. No, they're copying 90% of what that movie is doing. And
Goodfellas or the Godfather series.
Pretty much. And I mean, even the Godfather created, and what Goodfellas did essentially is like, okay, let's take all that and essentially take out the organized crime and make it messier and knock it down a couple levels. We are not the big bosses, guys. What are these underling guys' lives like?
Right.
And
they take the family out of it, basically.
Yes. And even, I mean, so essentially, if anybody needs to be good at doing mob stuff, you have to take it, okay, you want to be Goodfellas-esque. You can't really go away from that anymore. You have to have some sort of acknowledgement of it. And you can have an homage to it, but you can't just like steal from it directly. You have to take a level that, like, Donnie Brasco, great example.
Yes.
Another good example of essentially taking that and having it from the different perspective and the true story of it all. Even Departed,
I think.
The Departed
does its own thing.
Yes, does its own thing.
It departs, if you will.
Very good word choice. Think of The Sopranos. It's like, okay, it's one guy in his life, but mostly about his family and his mental state. Like, okay, like, so a lot of movies just copy what Goodfellas did and try to do that. And any movie that tries to do some deviation is nice. Which this is more a One Bad Night than it is like a Goodfellas movie.
Yeah.
Like The Night from Hell.
Yeah. True. Yeah. That's funny you bring that up. This movie is really compressed into a couple of days.
18 hours, I think they said. Because the opening thing where he's taking Oleg home and you think Oleg shot, they say 18 hours earlier. So you're like, a day and a half or less than a day. So
yeah. Okay. Something that is referenced in this movie several times, dealing with Russian organized crime. What can you tell me what Little Odessa actually is? They reference Little Odessa, I think, a couple of times.
Odessa is a city in Russia off the Black Sea. Is it off? It's Black Sea. Is that right?
I think you're right. I'm not, but I'm saying Little Odessa in the United States.
I
It's
actually,
like Chinatown,
oh
or
yeah. Is it Brighton Beach or
it is
okay?
Brighton Beach. Very good.
Okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. Like you can tell, I can tell you, yeah, Brooklyn, Queens, Harlem, the Bronx. I can
Mhm.
tell you those things. I don't have any reference to actually where they are. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brighton Beach is situated in between Coney Island and Manhattan Beach.
okay.
And yeah, it's very tight knit Russian and Eastern European community.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah.
I think of
Right.
like a Lord of War. I think
Yes.
that was set down. Okay. That's what I think of whenever I think of like
Absolutely. Yeah.
Little Odessa. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of Russians, Ukrainians, former, Soviet bloc.
Czechs. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Former Soviet bloc,
Sure.
basically.
Okay.
All right. What are your someone I really like, an actor that's in this that I really like is Michael Cudlitz.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I like Michael Cudlitz too.
What else have you seen him in?
So I never saw Southland.
I love Southland.
I knew you did. I knew that was going to be the thing you were thinking of. But that's not exactly what I remember him from. He's just he's been in a lot of stuff throughout the years. I remember him
Band of Brothers.
I remember the movie The Negotiator. He was the sniper that decided not to kill Samuel L. Jackson. Let's see here. What else do I remember him from? He was in Band of Brothers, wasn't he? Who was
he was Bull.
Yeah, oh, that's right. The sergeant. Yes.
Yeah. And he was actually like missing in action for a while. True story. And then made it back to his lines.
Oh, interesting. So I've never seen Southland, but I've always heard that Southland's great and he's great in it.
It's good. He's a very tough character.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed Dichotomy.
Yeah.
And he's a very tough character. He's this old, tough-nosed training officer cop, and but he's struggling with an addiction to pain meds.
Oh, interesting.
And so he's a very interesting character.
And he's on The Walking Dead.
Good.
I forgot he's on The Walking Dead. I forgot. Okay. That was the big thing. That's where he's making his money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember what his name was.
Abraham.
I think he's dead.
Abraham.
Yeah.
So
I gave up on that show.
I did too.
A couple years ago.
I think he actually died was the last episode I saw. I've never seen Southland, but I've seen clips of Southland, specifically the one I think where the kid calls 911 on his mom because she spanked him. And he shows up and he comes out here and like gives the mom something to beat it, hit him again or something like that. Or it's one of those kind of like, I'm sure it's a lot of like, well, as cops, we can't actually do that, but I like the idea of like,
yeah. Well, there's one episode in particular that I recall where they have to make a death notification. And so he's got this rookie. I don't remember what his name is. Good looking blonde.
The kid from the OC.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have to make this death notification, and this kid's all cocky about it. And he's like, okay, knocks on the door and he's like, hey, is your son's name Bob or whatever? She's like, yeah. And he says, oh, he's dead. Like he died in a car wreck. Of course, she freaks out and everything. And then the field training officer, Michael Cudlitz, is like, what's the last name? this, and they realized they made a death notification to them.
Oh no!
I have witnessed that.
Really, you've seen that in person?
I've actually witnessed it. Death notifications are bad enough.
Sure.
When you get them wrong,
Oh, they're even worse.
and then be like, no, it's like Saving Private Ryan when they go tell him all his brothers are dead. That one,
yeah,
it was a different James Ryan.
Yeah. Oh man, that's I cannot imagine the hell and then the release.
So cringy.
Oh, jeez.
So cringy.
That's terrible.
Cringy,
yeah. Oh man.
All right. So last thing, when they've got Paul Walker in the hockey rink, and they start shooting slap shots at his face.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with pre-masks or helmet hockey players?
Oh yeah. I've seen. Well, I worked for a hockey team for a few months and that was so. I mean, I've seen some stuff in even with masks that are so. I'll tell this real quick. So I was working for a minor league hockey team, and this one guy on our team at the All-Star game had won the hardest shot award because they measured it for speed. I think it was like 98 miles an hour. He is about 4 feet in front of a guy. A guy is 4 feet in front of him defending, and he shoots as hard as he can and hits an ice chip. So instead of going straight, it goes up. And the guy's mask is here, and it
gets
goes
ramped
right here,
right underneath. Yeah,
and he was on the ground for 40 minutes before they got him off the ice. And I mean, and the coach of that team had to retire because he took a puck to the eye, and just and these are guys with masks on. So I mean, the like you said, I think there's a famous photo of hockey player.
I've got it right here.
Oh, I'm ready. This is the one I'm thinking of. It's the old timey.
Yeah, it's Terry Sawchuk.
Okay.
So for our viewers or listeners, just look up Terry, Terry, Sawchuk, Sawchuk. I'm going to show.
Man, he looks like Frankenstein. He was a hockey goal. He was a goalie.
Yeah, he was a goalie. Maskless goalie. That dude was just taking pucks to the face all the time.
And you know what he did? He took a puck to the face and kept just like following it around. Hockey players are a different breed. I mean,
they are.
Yes. The famous story about the one guy, he had gone into cardiac arrest on the bench, and they brought him back, and he wakes up and goes, "Can I go in?" He's like,
"You just had a heart attack, man."
It's like, oh, so that's no? Okay, cool. Yeah. Hockey players
and
are different breed.
I've seen two where guys have literally had their jugulars cut by skates.
Yep.
And they're literally bleeding out on the ice.
Those things, the
two I know of, luckily they saved them, but God, yeah, it's just a pretty brutal sport.
I think I want to say there was this. So there's this this is a guy. This is 4 weeks ago, by the way. A player for the let's see here, Winnipeg, Morgan Barron. He required 75 stitches because of a cut to the face, and then he came back into the game. The same game. I mean, come on. That is.
Jeez, man. It's like, I can work through injuries, but there's a point I'm going to be like, I'm going to go home.
Yeah, it's like if I'm working out and I accidentally hit myself in the side of the head, it's like, well, I guess I'm done for the day. Like, I'm not like, I'm not going to keep going. People are different levels of that. If hockey players, man.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I think I'm done with you,
All
man.
you got for
I'll
me?
let you go.
I appreciate that. What is your final ranking of Running Scared?
I was pleasantly surprised. I had never heard of it, never seen it, had never seen a preview, nothing. My wife hadn't either, but we were both pleasantly surprised. We were like, that was pretty good.
I agree.
I mean, yeah, there's things you can pick apart, of course.
Sure.
But we're like, it's a good, entertaining movie, good plot. Acting was sufficient.
I think so too.
I liked it.
Awesome. Me too. I'm right on board with you. I have it 3 out of 5. A movie, like you said, a surprise that how watchable and good it is, considering how much it got lambasted and how it didn't make any money. But that just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic and Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at NebHasBeen, on Letterboxd at Neb810, on Instagram, Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website, icecreamforfreaks.com. You can follow my other writings, The Film Experience and Cinema Scholars. You can also find me on other pods, as I'm the David Thulis of podcasting. Jake, where can the people find you? I can only assume hanging out in a hockey rink, waiting for people to come and smash your face with a fluorescent hockey puck.
You know, I am surprisingly, I'm very used to getting hit in the face.
Yeah.
So probably chances are I'll be somewhere with things impacting my head. Probably.
Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter, Critic Comment Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you can find us. Thank you very much for having us. Want to give another shout out once again to Matthew Anderson for picking this out. Very much appreciate your patronage.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you a shout out whenever this posts as well. Thank you very much. We got another good one next week.
Sir.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And we got another good one next week, another listener's choice episode. Maybe a topic that hits today's social the social boundaries of maybe a type of film that hits those watermarks and very politically minded, or maybe it's just Miss Doubtfire. Who knows? Like we'll get into it next week. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Love y'all.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?